Good morning, Fort Lauderdale. Erev Tov, Herzliya. Assalamu alaikum in Abu Dhabi. My name's Wayne Firestone. I'm the Executive Director of the America-Israel Friendship League, and it is a distinct pleasure to be here today with this wonderful panel on the topic of digital diplomats for the Abraham Accords. We are indeed talking about a historic development, a historic positive development over the last several months. And we're going to look at this topic through the lens of people, how people and future generations can be engaged not only in peacemaking, but in making the world a better place, not only for themselves, but for their kids. We have an audience from around the world. We love, even though we're starting an hour earlier, that everybody has been able to join us. So please send us your greetings in the chat. And if you're viewing on Facebook, we're keeping an eye on you there as well, and we'll give you as much love as possible. So send us your questions to the various panelists. We'll try to get to that as many as we can over the course of the hour. We're going to begin today with two great colleagues who are based in New York, who had the vision and idea to make this happen. They said, you know, they were really busy in the fall explaining the Abraham Accords to all the policymakers in the press and to officials throughout really the United States. But when we took a look at it afterwards, we said, you know what, we need to look at this as a historic opportunity, not only for people who are sitting in offices today, but people who will be sitting offices in the future, people who this will affect in their schools, in their universities, and frankly, on their social media channels as well. So it's my great pleasure to begin with Consul General, His Excellency Abdallah Shaheen, joining us from, it looks like a New York office today, which gives us a great opportunity to see the world sort of reviving and coming back. I know this has been a challenging time for everyone, including our friends in the diplomatic corps. Ambassador Shaheen has been with the foreign ministry in the United Arab Emirates for over a decade. He studied in the United States earlier before that and got his Bachelor of Science from Embry-Riddle in Florida. So we know you know a lot about the American society. Tell us a little bit about the program that we have today and on behalf of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Wayne, for the kind introduction, and hello, everyone. Allow me to start by thanking the America-Israel Friendship League and the Consulate General of Israel in New York for putting this event together. As you know, this past September, the UAE and Israel signed a historic Abrahamic Accord at the White House, announcing diplomatic relations between the UAE and Israel. From the UAE establishment, our late founding father, His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, believed celebrating differences, establishing dialogue, and promoting global coexistence was essential to building stable and peaceful societies. Since the announcement of the Abrahamic Accord, the relationship between the UAE and Israel has developed rapidly. The UAE and Israel have already opened up for trade and tourism and have already begun cooperating on COVID vaccination and regional security. For example, this past week, Dubai announced that the trade with Israel exceeded $270 million in the past 5 months and will reach $4 billion annually in the coming years. These achievements are a testament to the Abrahamic Accords fulfilling their purposes and creating immediate and meaningful security, economic, and social benefits for the region. The UAE and Israel have also started to engage in several cultural initiatives to learn more about each other's history and traditions. As a Consul General, I have been honored to attend many events, including celebrating Hanukkah for the first time this year. For those who are just now learning about the UAE, I just want you to know that the UAE is a young country with young leaders and large population of ambitious young people. Today, the UAE is modern, dynamic, and diverse nation with residents from over 200 nationalities living side by side and calling the UAE home. In just 49 years, we proudly see how much we have achieved. A few recent and remarkable examples include welcoming the Pope for the first time in the GCC region, hosting the Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, launching our first mission to Mars, which is in 1 week away from its orbit, as well as developing a vibrant economy, advances in women empowerment, and building a society of peaceful environment. The UAE is a future-focused society, and we are excited to build a bright and a better future together with Israel and the region. With that, this morning, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our panelist from the UAE, His Excellency Omar Aghbash, Assistant Minister for Cultural Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. His Excellency Omar began his career with the UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a diplomat at the UAE mission to the United Nations. The first time I met His Excellency Omar was when he was the UAE ambassador to Russia. One of his notable achievements includes his acclaimed book, Letters to a Young Muslim, a series of personal and insightful letters to his sons. I am humbled to have His Excellency Omar Aghbash joining us today. I'm also proud to introduce Omar Al-Breiki, an active and a passionate Emirati youth. Omar is a UAE youth delegate to the UN for the year 2018 and currently serves as the unit head of environment assessment at the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi. I am excited that this event is focused on youth and digital diplomacy, and I'm looking forward to hearing their discussion on engaging the next generation and building bridges of cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And now I want to present your colleague in nearby in Manhattan, our good friend, the Consul General from New York, Israel Nitzan. Israel has the distinction of being a career diplomat with the Israel Foreign Ministry and has had former postings, and this is, I believe, his fourth posting. He's also been in Cairo, and it's a great pleasure to work with Israel on a number of these programs with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Israel, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Wayne, and I want to thank you and all our friends in the America-Israel Friendship League for hosting this event and for the amazing work you're doing in actually strengthening the friendship and the special bond between Israel and the United States. So thank you for that. And it's also great to see, again, my friend Abdallah Shaheen, the Consul General of the UAE in New York. I want to thank him for, first of all, for his friendship, but also to thank him for the partnership and the project that we're running together, including this in organizing this event. I think Israel and the UAE are both young countries that have developed dynamic and thriving economies in just a few decades. Both are at the cutting edge of innovation and technology, and share the same entrepreneurial spirit. The Abraham Accords are a legal framework as an agreement for our relationship and our peace, but the real work is being done actually in building the relationship, especially in our global world today, is done by people, by peoples from both countries who are building and meaningful relationships in different sectors between our societies. They also interact directly. They don't need the governments to mediate between them, and they identify the added value and where is exactly the right way and where are the right fields and topics that should be discussed and should be promoted, and there should be collaborations on. In essence, the agreement has established a visionary future of peace and prosperity generations to come, when both Israel and the UAE have given priority to the well-being of their own citizens. And especially, it's related to this, to our discussion today, especially relevant to the future generations. On a personal note, and I hope that Abdallah agrees that I say that, I'm thinking today about our Hanukkah candlelighting event that we hosted both consulates earlier this year during Hanukkah, when Abdallah actually brought his daughter to the event. And for me, it was such a meaningful experience, because it was not just a celebration of a holiday, a Jewish holiday in this case, between diplomats, but actually an opportunity. It was an actual, it was an opportunity to educate and to bring peace to the younger generation, and the relevance of our younger generation and the future leaders in our relationship today. So I really thank so much the AIFL for initiating this important discussion today on way we actually encourage our younger generation, our future leaders, in interacting with each other directly by using the latest technology and especially social media, again, to strengthen the peace and to create meaningful relationships between our citizens. And in this note, I think that it is my honor and real pleasure to introduce a friend and a colleague, Ambassador Noam Katz, Senior Deputy Director General and the Head of Public Diplomacy in the Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem. As Head of Public Diplomacy, Ambassador Katz oversees the full array of Israel's public diplomacy activities around the globe, and especially in the Middle East, including traditional and digital communication strategies. And I think that there is no better person to discuss this topic today than Ambassador Katz. And again, thank you again, and I'm looking forward to an interesting and engaging discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Israel. So we're going to dive in now with Ambassador Gobash. Public diplomacy, if you're going to talk to young people, you better know what TikTok is. You better be able to talk to them on platforms. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned. And I'm so intrigued by this book that your colleague mentioned, Letters to a Young Muslim. How is it that you can have meaningful conversations with the next generation about what peace might look like, how we can build a better world for the younger people?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all. Wayne, you know, when you mentioned TikTok, I go back immediately to the dance classes that I took in London in December, because I'm really, really keen to connect with youth on TikTok with my own little dance moves. It's very challenging to figure out how all of these different platforms operate and how we can integrate our own kind of slightly more adult understandings of the world. What I would want to say about public diplomacy is that in the last couple of years, we've become much more aware of the importance of public diplomacy and the importance of actually beginning to influence and craft the image that our nation has. And we are spending a lot of time thinking about how it is that we're going to connect with people. And it's, you know, there is, of course, the platforms like Twitter and so on. But there is something even more basic, and that is actually having something to say and being able to go out and speak to people and explain away misconceptions and stereotypes and biases. And it's just taking control of that, you know, the sense of who you are, in particular in the Emirates, and taking our 50-year history and being able to say to people, actually, you know, we're more than just, you know, sort of guys in white and women in black and camels and so on. The story of the Emirates is a remarkable story, and one of, well, I mean, almost miraculous survival in a very tough neighborhood. So we also think of public diplomacy increasingly as a means for presenting our vision for the region. And the vision for the region is one of an example of what you can do in our part of the world. we don't need to be, in religious conflict. We don't need to be in ethnic conflict. We don't need to be fighting over resources. In fact, what we can be doing is developing economically. It's educating our young. It's sharing ideas with our neighbors, sharing experiences in, sort of state building and all the stuff that you find in administration and bureaucracy. It's trading and making sure that you can actually take advantage of trade lanes. And it's looking at the world maybe less as just as a regional issue, but looking at the world as a set of global problems that we should all be participating in solving. I think that's the kind of approach that the Emirates is increasingly taking. We recognize that we are connected globally through our hubs, through our airlines, through our logistics and transport systems. And we also recognize that we're connected globally because of our, our computer and software systems, our legal system, and of course the financial system. So we have an interest in creating as much peace as we can in our region. And I think, the biggest step that we could have taken is the one we took with the Abraham Accords, to actually reach out and say, look, not speaking to each other for 70 years or 50 years in terms of the existence of the Emirates has really not led to much prosperity. And we think that it's by engaging with friends and enemies alike, through conversation, through dialogue, keeping the doors open, is going to be the way forward. And I'm sure I've taken more time than I've been allotted, so over to you.
It's really helpful to hear that perspective, and it is a global perspective. While we are focused on the important relationship between the United States and Israel, we have people on this call who have already called in from Amsterdam, from Casablanca, from the Gulf, from the Gulf of Florida and the Gulf in the Middle East. So we do know that if we get this right and we approach public diplomacy in a way that actually engages the next generation, not just pushes them off, we have new opportunities. So let me now go to Ambassador Katz. We already have someone who's written in from Tel Aviv, Ambassador Katz, about visiting the Emirates for the Special Olympics. We know that there is a tremendous response, a warmth even, I would say, of Israelis who just got on planes and wanted to visit. And we know you've already received visitors. Tell us about what this moment looks like as a diplomatic moment for Israel.
First, I would say that for me, it was extremely exciting to be part of the development that brought our two countries together. It's an historic moment, and as a diplomat, it's something that you yearn to be part of as a peak of career, and it happened to us. My first visit to Dubai and to the Emirates was before the establishment of relations, and it was part of being heading the team that will build and lead the participation of Israel in the World Expedition or the World Expo that will start in Dubai this October. And I remember my first visit there, and I was amazed from the hospitality and from the very relaxed and easygoing conversation with colleagues. And you have all kinds of assumptions before you go to a place based on the fact that you don't have diplomatic relations. And I was totally surprised. The opportunity of being part of that, it's something great to me. And I think that there is a lot of enthusiasm in Israel and outside of Israel, in other places in the region, and of course in the Emirate itself. I think that relations between states are much more than the relations between governments. In order to have strong relations between nations and states, you need that all walk of society, all layers of society will be part of the relations. You want civil society to engage with civil society. You want business community to engage with business community, but you want them also to interact with one another. You want business community to interact with civil society and civil society with government. And the more interactions you have, the stronger the relations are. And I think that our major responsibility at this time is to build the roads and the necessary infrastructure that such relations will be natural and smooth and will run by itself. Government has to initiate sometimes, government has to bring things together and groups together and to create the opportunities and to support them when they are happening. That's the role of public diplomacy. And public diplomacy is complementing diplomacy in that regard because it's living in the public sphere. When we think about the ways to interact, one very important tool that we have is the interaction through social media. In 2006, 2007, we in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs realized that social media is a new dimension of life. It's a place where all activities of human beings are happening, and it's cut all the barriers and the obstacles that you have sometimes between nation states and people because of political situation, because of legal constraints and other things like that. And therefore, we started at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to build capacity in order to engage with people all over the world, but we put high attention to build bridges and conversation in the Middle East. We believe that we are part of the Middle East, that we are going to live. We understand that there are conflicts. We have to solve the conflict. We are not going anywhere, and the people around us are not going anywhere. And therefore, we have to develop conversation. It has a value for itself, and it also serves the benefit of both people. And it is tough because you have to overcome, in order to develop such kind of relations, to overcome a lot of psychological barriers, language barriers. When you think about social media, it's not only Arabic or Hebrew or English, it's also the social media language. In 2006, there were platforms that today do not exist, but we started with them. It was Dig and Stumble Upon and MySpace, and today it's Facebook and LinkedIn and others. And they are emerging platforms, and you have to study how to talk in those languages. And in order to talk in those languages, you have to be relevant. You have to develop conversation. It's not I'm telling you. You have to create engagement, and you have to bring a lot of groups and people and elements into that conversation. And sometimes it's tough conversation. You have to keep it alive, and it means that you have to use all kinds of tools that are needed. And when you think about young people that are using and fluent in those languages, you know, I'm old, but people are young and fluent in those languages, you need to engage with them in the way that they engage. It means that you have to use a lot of videos, and you have to adapt to the contents and topics that are of interest to them. Sure. And you have to adapt to new culture. Let's say gaming is very important today. So you have to create gaming opportunities that bring people together. I would say, and I would end here, and I would say that the numbers are talking for themselves. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a network of 800 channels. We have 12 channels that are open to, official channels that are open to the, open in Arabic and discuss with different groups and cultures and nations in the Middle East. And we are about to open a new 4 channels like this. And we have about 100 million exposure monthly, with very encouraging and very engaging conversations. through them. I'll stop here, and later on,
Right.
I'll.
So, Dr. Atrakchi, this feels like an educational moment when Ambassador Katz talks about the need for us to think beyond just government to government. You're the Secretary General for the Israel Commission at UNESCO, so you've seen different kinds of cultural and educational cooperation on the global stage, but you also have a PhD in Middle East Studies from Bar-Ilan University. Tell us about this very moment that you see the region opening up. We're opening up our homes to one another. We're opening up our holiday traditions to one another. Our universities are looking for different ways to collaborate. What do you see this moment as an educator providing new opportunities for?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you all for participating here in the American Israeli Friendship League for organizing it, and to thank our friends, new friends from the UAE for participating here with us. It's very important for us, and I think that we all noticed the excitement of people in Israel, in the Emirates, and all over the world after signing the Abraham Accords, and the fact that everyone was very positive about it and was willing to do a lot of things in order to communicate and to create new waves of communication between people in both countries. I think it was very clear that it was official, it was open, it was on daylight, and it was all over the social networks, with the thing that is really, I call it the real world of the new days, because when you are on social networks and you see what happens there, you can see that things are really evolving very quickly. The connection or cooperation between the states is one thing, but the other thing is the connection between people. In order to create those connections in the best way possible, we have to invest in the present and in the future. And we have to give it a very large scope and to be able to open all the doors to the young generation to enter through. And one of the stories that, or one of the visits, the very interesting visit that happened a couple of months ago, was a visit of a young group of men and women from the Emirates in Israel. They came here for about a week, I think. They traveled all over the country. They met a lot of young people from Israel. And it was very exciting to see them coming to Israel. Not only Israelis going to the Emirates in thousands in the past couple of months, but really to see the connection they were building with Israeli youth. It was interesting and very, very moving. So if we want to invest, as I said, in connections in the future, in the present and the future, for me, in my eyes, the most important thing is to invest in education. I'm representing here two ministries, actually, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education and Youth. And whenever you look at it, for every point of view you're looking at this issue, I think that you see that in order to bring young people, youth, children to the knowledge, to what we need to know about each other, you have to give them two things, actually. You have to give them the information, and you have to lead them to bring in their own conclusions and their own perceptions about what we want to do. If we want to, as adults, to lead them and to guide them in the right way, we have to give them all the opportunities to explore other cultures, and the nearest cultures are the most easy to bring them to. As someone who really dealt with Middle Eastern studies for many years, I know that we have much more in common than what differs us. And this is really important, and I'll tell you a personal story, if I may. I was teacher for many years, and I taught Middle Eastern studies in high schools in Israel. And I taught about the Gulf countries, the Gulf states, and I taught about the Emirates. And when the Abraham Accords broke into our lives, a lot of my students called me on the phone, former students actually, on the phone through social medias, etc. And they said, wonderful, now we can go and see what we studied about. One of them even told me that he became a kind of a lecturer to all his friends and family and explained them what he studied about the Gulf states and about the Emirates, what he knows about these areas. And he even asked me to send him a PowerPoint I once showed my students about the UAE in order to really reflect what is this place. So it was really exciting. It was very moving for me. And this is why I want to conclude with two things. First, we have the opportunity here to bring youngsters to what the other Aldous Huxley called, and I am only using the title, A Brave New World. We are building here a new world, which is very brave and it's very exciting. And the way to do it, and this is the second thing that I want to conclude with, is to personalize these relations. We need to be able to cooperate, to coordinate things for the young people, and to bring to the table many collaborations which ministries have started to do. So thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I want to introduce the next segment. I'm really excited about our next two speakers. But one of the things I learned in preparation for this webinar is not only does the United Arab Emirates have a ministry of youth, a dedicated ministry of youth, but it's run by someone in her 20s, a Rhodes Scholar who immediately understood the need to give voice to young people in this ministry and their projects. We've got a video clip from you which will introduce you to her and this initiative a little bit, and we hope this is really something that maybe us in the United States can learn from our friends in Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv about what it means to give voice to young people and not just talk about them.
Thing is the UAE stands for diversity and inclusion. We aim to be a nation that also creates an environment characterized by respect, by forgiveness, by peaceful coexistence, by tolerance for all humanity, and an unprecedented developmental experience that leads to the prosperity of this region.
Is to create the opportunity for people to meet each other. And sometimes, there's a sense of despondency of, will we ever be able to find each other? But I think the doors have been opened.
Because I was conditioned from my childhood growing up in this country to accept people of all nationalities.
Working on common project where we proudly, as UAE, we always say we are a cosmopolitan society where we have over 200 nationality, but now we can say we have 201 nationality with the Israelis now being part of it.
So, Omar, tell us a little bit about, I mean, you actually represented Abu Dhabi in 2018 at the United Nations as a youth ambassador. You're old enough to have a beard, but you certainly have, from our prior discussions, a real understanding about your colleagues. Tell us a little about what kind of reaction from when it was announced that there would be peace with Israel? How did people react, and where do you see that leading?
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you to the AIFL for having me today. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today with such distinguished panelists from both Israel and the UAE, and being able to represent the voice of the UAE youth. Today, our topic, basically the digital diplomats for the Abraham Accords, engaging the next generations, is such an important topic. Honestly, it gives us the opportunity to discuss how, first of all, digitalization played a role in both diplomacy and specifically in this historic accord. It gave us the opportunities that it's created, especially us for the youth, to communicate and build bridges, and the important role it will play for a more peaceful and prosperous future for Israel, the UAE, and the region as a whole. The youth, Wayne, currently are playing an important role basically in cementing and accelerating the bonds between our communities and our people. And I couldn't stress the huge role that digital platforms played, especially during the pandemic. It eased conversations and collaborations. It allowed us to come to agreements and make an impact from our homes. And I believe this culture of digitalization is becoming today and tomorrow's reality. So capitalizing on it is the key to tomorrow's success. And it brings us as nations closer together, allowing us to learn from each other and experience diversity in different ways. And just touching upon that video that we just saw, you know, and kind of revisiting some of the things that were said, the UAE, you know, my home is the home of diversity, coexistence and inclusion. We are a nation of over 200 nationalities, as you heard. And we strive as a nation and as a community to build an environment of peaceful coexistence and tolerance. And this is actually one of the main pillars that our founding father, Sheikh Zayed, built this country on. You can kind of see a picture of him in the background right there. As a nation of this country, caring for the same values of our founding fathers and leaders, I'm very happy to welcome this accord, as well as the youth and all its values it brings in different forms, whether it be economical, social, cultural, environmental, diplomatic, or otherwise. I believe both our nations, the region, and the world as a whole, in fact, will benefit from this. And with that said, I look forward to our fruitful discussion.
Thanks, Omar. And I know your daytime job working at the Ministry of the Environment is really one of those issue areas that for this generation matters, and is one that you all feel needs to be discussed now and not just like sort of see you later, we'll talk about it later. So I'm very interested to explore that and hear your perspective. We had this is not your first webinar with AIFL. We had the good fortune to meet you very early in our efforts when we first started doing this twice a week, because we knew that people were stuck in their homes, stuck with isolation, stuck with anxiety, fear, concern. And you and a group of other colleagues who define themselves as social entrepreneurs, many of them coming out of high-tech backgrounds, and you guys pivoted unbelievably quickly to help, to do things that could be done in hospitals, in aging centers, in schools, etc. And I was so impressed at the time of just the lightning speed with which you all operated in. And it feels like the Abraham Accords have also sort of been this lightning speed that we've been seeing people going. And I know you and Omar actually met in person already in the Gulf. So tell us how this has progressed, on such a fast track.
First of all, thank you very much for this unique opportunity. I want to thank the distinguished speakers before me, and especially for Omar, my friend. In the last few months, I don't have the time to sleep, I will tell you the truth. We are running day to night to build these relations, and we understand the importance of it. I want to say very clear what we believe is our mission. I think there is three main pillars in cementing the peace. And my friends, the ambassadors here, maybe will approve it. The first part would be the diplomatic part that opened the door for the discussion, the leaders of the UAE and Israel that started the official discussions. The second part is the business, that was a major part and will still be a major part of it. But I believe that the differences between warm peace. And cold peace would be how much public we have here in this connection. If I can take my WhatsApp and call Umar and send him a video or speak with him, come to visit him, with his family, enjoy a nice dinner together. And this is exactly what we are doing here. I was glad, and I'm still glad to do on a daily basis and building this relation and cementing it by a project we call Leaders of Tomorrow. Because we believe that the leaders that opened the discussion gave us an opportunity to create a better future. And this better future would be based if me and Umar and our friends together that working day to night to create it will have the project that will bring more people to be as part of it, but especially will build a bridge for a better foundation for trust and understanding. And I believe that especially in the region, in the area of the Gulf and Middle East, we saw a lot of darkness, but here we have an opportunity to have the best solution for darkness, and that's light. And I believe that this is exactly what's happening here. Last week we had the historical moment. We had an event for the Holocaust Memorial Day, and I saw the faces of the people that was part of it. We also had the ambassador of Israel to the United Arab Emirates, but including members of the group, young people from around the region. And I saw the faces, I saw the hope on the faces. That was the most important thing of it. And I'm glad to be part of it. And I think the most important lesson that I learned from my friends in the UAE is to have respect for your friends, and especially have respect for people that are different from you. And I was visiting in the UAE, and I got that feeling for any places I went, in each one of the meetings. And I want to thank for them for teaching us this important lesson. And I just want to thank for my friends in the UAE that joined us for this important journey. And again, for the AFL members for listening here and viewing this event tonight.
Great. Thanks so much, Ayal. Ambassador Gobash, I want to go back to you for a second. Why has this happened so quickly? And are there things that we can actually learn from the younger generations to actually move the people-to-people part of the interaction in ways that frankly governments don't do well, or it's probably not best for them? Is there a clear passing of the baton here for them to be able to just take it and run and do things in your Ministry of Youth that perhaps other ministries would never even think about?
Well, I have to admit, watching that video, I was a bit surprised. I didn't realize that our Ministry of Youth had already taken all of these steps. Fantastic. It helps us, then claim responsibility for this great public diplomacy. So I'll send a note to the minister saying, well done. The question about why it's happened so quickly, I actually think that it took a very long time. I think once the decision was made, yes, it happened very quickly. But actually, my understanding is that there was a desire, at least in the Emirates, amongst leadership, to do this maybe 10 years ago. But the circumstances weren't right. The environment wasn't right. And I think also there's been a certain sense of maturing into what the Emirates is really about, and not being embarrassed or in being able to look at the taboos that have traditionally driven our lives and to say, look, we are going to put an end to some of these taboos because they're not appropriate for the modern world anymore. And so I think that's one of the major reasons why we were able to do it and to make peace. Now, I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic if more people are traveling. Of course, I spent the last few weeks in Dubai, and I've never seen so many Israelis in one place. It was really quite remarkable. And our doors are open, and I think that we would really like to come and visit Israel as well. I'd love to be there myself. Corona came in and got in the way. I think it would have been absolutely fascinating to see how much more travel there would have been had we had open borders like that.
So there's no question that the context for the speed with which this has moved has been in spite of the fact that there are travel restrictions, there are interruptions, as you've referred to, and I do think we're wise to distinguish between some of the long-term opportunities versus the short-term, just getting to know you and getting to begin to collaborate, begin to talk together about things that makes sense. So, Ambassador Katz, we already have a question in here about the area of potential collaboration with industrial parks. Look, there's when we hear the Consul General talk about the space program and other areas of industry that Abu Dhabi is investing in for the long term, there clearly seem to be some opportunities. What's the times? What do you think that will happen? And based on the initial business allegations and contacts that are existing, or what might that how might that manifest itself?
I think that our both societies are very similar in their entrepreneurial zeal and in their ambition to look beyond the horizon and find and to innovate. It's something that is unique to our both societies, and therefore I think that the conversation between people, business sector, technology sectors, is smooth and natural. We've seen that right from the beginning. By the way, the beginning was before the establishment of diplomatic relations. There was a good deal of knowing one another in both societies when it comes to the business sectors and to the economic sectors. When we established the relation, the first thing that we did, we create the infrastructure that it will be easier for both sides. We established transportation contacts, and we established visa waivers that allow us to travel fast. And we establish accords that deals with finance. So we create the infrastructure, the roads, the autostrads that will allow relations to grow. And I think that there is, in every way that, in every direction that you will look on what both societies has to offer to one another, you can find partnerships and common ground. And that's why, that is the main reason why you see a very quick growth when somebody is saying to you that in 6 months we have business relations that are over billion shekel, 270 million US dollar. That's give only the taste of what is possible. So I think that there is a growing possibilities in cyber technology, in health sectors, in agricultural sectors. When we'll be there in the expo, that will be a huge opportunity for us to bring the cutting edge of what Israel is developing, emerging technologies, and to meet with the emerging technologies and areas of interest that are in the Emirate and in the region. And I think that that will be a major drive for the relations between our two nations and, in fact, the entire region.
Omar and Eyal, I want to come back to you guys for a moment. You met in person. What were your first impressions, and what subsequently have you found that has resonated, that you see opportunity for potential collaboration and even mutual understanding around issues that you've already identified? Omar, let me start with you.
Honestly, I think the first time, remembering the first time we spoke, me and Eyal, it was actually in that video. It was that call that we had, the youth circle between the Israeli youth and the UAE youth. And after that conversation, I actually got a private message from Eyal saying, hey, let's talk. And it was quite exciting. So I was like, let's do it. We had our first conversation, and the thing about it that I can remember, it went by so fast. It became Omar and Eyal. It wasn't Eyal from Israel and Omar from the United Arab Emirates. It was all about how can we collaborate, what can we do, what can we accelerate. And I think that made the difference. Eyal was saying we chat on WhatsApp now. We're literally have opened all lines of communication with each other, and we touch base from time to time. And I think this is the future. We want to see more more of Umar and Iyal, and I think that's happening at a very fast pace, so it's great to see.
Iyal, what's that going to look like? More of Omar and Iyal and Shama and the others who were on that call that you were introduced with.
I have a very simple dream. I wanna see here next to my apartment in Tel Aviv, I wanna have an Emirati neighbor. That's my dream, and I think it's gonna make true very soon. And I think this relation, and you asked me what I saw firstly after we started the relation, I saw the motivation from the Emirati youth to be the leaders for this normalization. And not right after, short time afterwards, we saw more countries joining. And as we're working on a daily basis, building this connection and creating more delegations and social media activities and summits, and the next summit is going to be in Dubai in a month, and I hopefully going to send you a few pictures from there. The most important thing is to see how together we have a common ground to work together, and especially shared motivation. And I think this is the most important thing that I saw since we started this connection, in addition for a different kind of similarities in way of life, in understanding, in thinking.
Great. Dr. Karachi, I want to come back to you. For me, it was fun to see my old colleague from NYU, Yehuda Sarna, in that video, and a great example of universities that began to collaborate and cooperate, and what came from that. I'm curious what you're seeing. Are there opportunities for the Israeli universities and other non-governmental educational organizations to build from these initial, let's call it euphoria, let's call it what it is. There's been a euphoria about this sort of breakthrough of peace, but how is that going to translate into actual people-to-people contacts and institution building in the region?
Well, thank you, Wayne. The first couple of weeks after the signing of the agreement, the Abraham Accords, I've got many emails and phone calls from not only me, the Israeli researchers and research institutions that wanted to create contacts with their colleagues from the UAE. And that was only a start. I know that they already established contacts through the universities themselves, through the institutions of research, personal contacts between researchers in order to build a kind of personal collaboration for academic research for both sides, which was very, very fruitful in the last month since the openness of the two countries to each other. On the other side of education, the Minister of Education of Israel and the Minister of Education of the United Arab Emirates met 10 days ago and had a very nice and fruitful discussion about cooperation and collaboration between education systems in both countries. So we are thinking about a lot of opportunities to elaborate it and to implement it in the next future and the next months to come, hopefully in person and not only via Zoom or social media connections, hoping that the pandemic will be over and we will be able to meet.
So someone put a comment in saying, our conversation so far has been a love fest. If so, we're guilty. You know, this has been a year where there's not been a lot to celebrate, where there's not been, we together have been just trying to make it through this year in our own local communities as well as nationally. And we've discovered it is better with friends. It is better with people who you can commiserate with, you can joke with, you can speak with by first name. I would have called both of our Omars, but it would have been confusing. I was offered instead of ambassador, and I think that is the right vision. I want to give everyone before we're almost, believe it or not, we're almost at the top of the hour. So I want to come back up to the consul generals and give everyone an opportunity one thing that I learned in preparation in our earlier calls is that in the UAE, there is a building or a facility that's called 2071, because there's actually concerted thinking about what the world's going to look like 50 years from now. And I was very taken with that. And so I want to close giving each of the panelists an opportunity in a sentence or two to just describe, if we're successful, if we're in this love fest now, what's the possibility of success in 2071? What will be the legacy of the Abraham Accords if we're successful and we take from the Ratzon, the goodwill that we built already now, into the future? So I'm going to start with you, Consul General in New York. Go ahead. I need to take you off. We'll start with Consul General Shaheen. But I think you're on mute. There we go.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you so much. I would like to actually thank everyone for joining us today for this fruitful conversation and discussion. And I actually wanted to add more, if there is more time that we can actually add, but I know that everyone is restricted with time, but allow me to also invite everyone to our beloved expo that is going to be taking place hopefully this year. And I wanted to take this opportunity to actually send an invitation to everyone who's actually joining us here. You know, expo is going to be from October of this year up until April 2022. And it's the greatest show of the world for this time, hopefully. Hopefully it's going to be, virus is going to be over and we will be there in person. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that invitation. We will indeed send it on to all of the listeners as a follow-up, and we're excited for that as a vision as well, being able to visit and see technology and culture and everything come together in the great expo. Israel Nitzan, what would success look like?
I'll be very brief. Well, first of all, success would be peace in our region. And I think that you mentioned 2071. You know, the vision of 2071 starts today, 2021, and it is our responsibility. I think that what comes out of this very, very interesting conversation is that the responsibility is ours, and we need to work today in order to build the future in 2071. And again, thank you so much for initiating this very important conversation. Thank you.
Ambassador Gabash.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I see this in a humorous light. In 2071, I shall be 100 years old. So I predict that I will be alive, sitting beside Ambassador Noam on the beach in Tel Aviv, chatting about all the great successes that we managed to pull off together.
That is a wonderful vision.
Thank you.
Ambassador Katz, how does that sound to you?
It sounds great. It means that medicine will do miracles. And it sounds great because it means, and that's my hope, is that our peace will set an example, a precedent that will lead to peace in the entire region. And I hope that Ambassador Gabash will come to Israel driving his car via all the other states in the region. That we will have open borders, and that people will learn how to enjoy the life together, dealing with our future challenges, because in 2071 probably we'll have new challenges that we cannot even imagine today.
Great. Dalit, what could the legacy be of the Abraham Accords 50 years out?
Well, I'm not sure I'll be alive to see it, but I hope that the vision will be a bunch of 15-year-old kids traveling by train from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi to meet their colleagues, and with no need of passports. This is really something that I am, in my vision, see the next generation and the next generation doing, and I hope it will happen. And thank you again, everyone, for this wonderful opportunity.
I love that. Omar, any work going on now in the Environment Ministry that might get us a fast train between Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv?
I think we'll be in hovering aircrafts by then. But yeah, you know, if I had to comment on what to expect, hopefully before 2071, is that where the UAE and Israel become an example of coexistence globally. That would be the dream, where we move from what we were to the example to follow. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks very much. Ayal, final word?
Thank you very much. Very briefly, I believe that there is a journey that we are starting today, and the key for that journey would be the foundation that we see here, the trust and the connection and the friendship. And I think maybe it looks differently in people looking for something that would be a kind of a reason that's happening. But I believe that the reason that that's happening is the reason that we are looking for trust, for friendship, and for collaboration. I just want to see it growing and more countries joining, and I believe that will come very soon. Thank you very much.
That is indeed a great vision. The final word I'll share from my learning and preparation for this is a ministry that exists, and I know this is not the actual translation in Arabic, but there's Omar described to be a ministry of the not impossible. And as soon as I heard that, it explained to me why the Israelis and the Emiratis have such great potential, and certainly the Americans, to embrace a vision forward that perhaps felt impossible before, but now seems like it's not impossible. And we're actually doing concrete things to realize that. For those of you that watch our series, you know that we are entrepreneurs and we like to look at the possibilities that exist in the world today. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, next week on our next episode that we have on Sunday, we're going to be looking at a group of people who, Muslim, Christian, and Jew, together, who climb Mount Kilimanjaro with various disabilities or abilities and made it to the summit in Tanzania, to Mount Kilimanjaro. It's a remarkable metaphor as well as an actual accomplishment. We'll be exploring it. Everyone, thanks for joining us today and thinking about what used to be impossible, but is now very much possible. Thanks to all our panelists and the Consul Generals in New York for organizing this with us with the American Friendship League. Everyone have a healthy and safe week and shovel as much snow as possible, but watch your backs.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the American Israeli Friendship League.
Thank you. Thank you all.